Welcome to the regular meeting for the Beavercreek Township Trustees on Monday, July 11th, 2022. If you all stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We have an agenda for today's meeting. Are there any changes or corrections? Hearing none. I'll
make a motion to approve the agenda for the July 11th, 2022 meeting.
Second.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Walls?
yes.
Make a motion to accept the general ledger report in the amount of $315,966.55 for the June 29th, 2022 payroll.
Second.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Walls?
Yes.
I make a motion to accept the payments listing reports in the amount of $362,776.44 for warrants through 7/7/22.
Second.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Walls?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes that are presented for the June 27th, 2022 tax budget public hearing and the June 27th, 2022 regular trustee meeting as presented.
Second.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Walls?
Yes. We're at a time in our meeting where we have open speaker for 3 minutes. Anybody that wishes to speak needs to state their name and address, and you get 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Chris Gilson, Vice President for Local 2857 Beavercreek Firefighters. Here on behalf of one of our members, Matt Clark. Matt Clark is unable to attend the meeting tonight. He asked me to read a brief to speak in his place in a matter that you guys are going to be discussing later in the meeting. Beavercreek Township Trustees, first I would like to apologize for not being here in person. I'm on a camping trip with my 3 sons. Last trustees meeting, you passed a resolution to place me on unpaid administrative leave while the investigation continued. As a single father raising 3 boys 50% of the time and a middle son with special needs, this has put a hardship on my family. I'm asking you today to allow me to use my sick leave in place of unpaid leave until the investigation is complete and I am back to work. Again, thank you for all your time. Matt Clark.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Mr. Zahari, if you have any comments?
I guess, is that an appropriate use of
Sick leave?
sick leave? I guess I'll direct you and to Ms. Stroke.
Yeah, an OVI that was reduced to reckless operation with a driving suspension is not an appropriate use of sick leave under the township policy or the union contract.
All right. Mr. Zahari, we have no old business. Any new business?
Thank you, board. First item I have is on page 19 of your packet is the public notice that went out for our joint meeting, followed by a draft agenda for our meeting on July 14th, 6:30 with the school board. Mr. Otten and I came up with kind of the discussion topics there. Some of the things were like the Board of Education would like to hear about is the project at US 35 in Treybine. Obviously, residential and commercial growth in the township. Kind of update where we are on some of the traffic patterns, some of the safety studies that we've completed. Schools would like to kind of give an update on the growth, development, and master facilities plan, and then just much like we do with City Council, just a roundtable discussion. We are, as you can see in the overall agenda early on, we'll take a 5-minute recess and then we'll continue on with theirs. And it is at the school board at 6:30. Any comments, changes that you would like to see?
No? I think it looks good. Anybody else?
No.
I've had nothing else.
Thank you, board. The next item is on page 22 of your packet is the biweekly report for the sheriff's office, followed by on page 40 of your packet, the monthly report for June. Captain Funk is here to answer any of your questions.
Oh, welcome, Captain Funk. Glad to have you at our meeting, and tell Sergeant Moore that we still keep our thoughts are with him as he progresses. Are there any questions of Captain Moore? Captain Funk.
I had no additional questions on the report. Thank you.
This kind of a typical question we ask, if there's any awareness items coming up that he has to pass along or that you have to pass along.
You didn't give me any.
Okay, no problem, thank you.
I had one question on the monthly incidents by hour of the day chart that we get. Are you?
Do you have that? So I can...
Sure.
When you see that, it looks like I believe this is for June. And usually the chart shows a high activity at like 5 and 6 in the morning.
Okay.
Whereas the June report shows a higher activity at 7 o'clock at night. When you see these reports, do you then work the shifts to hit some of these areas that show the high incident area? Or you kind of use this report to put the patrol cars in certain areas based on this?
Normally, we have assigned shifts anyways, so there's the same amount of people in those shifts throughout the same time period.
Right.
So there are traffic units that hit different times, but that's based on officers or deputies' time they put in for them. So, I mean, if we show a significant difference, we could change those times if needed.
Because this is a significant difference on this report this month, which is usually it's really early in the morning I see the high rate of incidents, and this one is later in the evening, which is unusual. 7 o'clock usually wasn't one of those points where it was a high rate. I don't know if people are just getting out later because it's hot.
Yeah, it could be summer. I didn't see the previous report, so
I understand.
I couldn't answer any more than
Yeah,
that.
when Sergeant Moore gets back, we'll
Yeah.
re-question that.
Yeah, and I'll give that to him and see what he says too.
Thank you.
I'm just ticked off because it's hot.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Board. Next item's on page 50 is the biweekly report for HR. Are there any questions?
Can you remind us, Alex, where we're at as far as health insurance contract?
Trish is on here as well.
Oh, okay.
I can do it. We did send out the fire forms, so Board, you will be, elected officials, you will be receiving that to go ahead and start our census data. We did put it out on SharePoint, so we're starting to collect the data early. We will hopefully have figures back by August or September for the last month of September deadline.
Okay.
I had a question. What's SharePoint?
SharePoint is it's an intranet, so it's where we pretty much a message board for all our staff.
Oh, okay.
So if I put out any, like for example, during COVID, when I was essentially putting out updates to COVID rules that changed on seemed like a daily basis, that's one area we would put it out so that everybody had that information.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's also a hosting library where we host a lot of our documents, so everyone has access to them.
So you click, you can get the SharePoint through here. And then it's a bulletin board, message board.
Oh,
It just,
okay.
when you log into Office, it's there.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the board, elected officials have access through Office 365 as well.
Okay. And the only reason not the only reason, but one of the reasons I asked was just purely from a standpoint of, obviously when we look at the escalation of costs and inflation hits to the township, just trying to anticipate when that cycle will be compared and when we will have the information prior to budget.
Yeah, so we will this time have, of course, our next contract, whoever it may be with, will end at December 31st. So we'll know this time for budget purposes if we have to make any serious adjustments to the budget for any increases that we may see, either with our current vendor or any other vendors that will essentially be putting proposals in. So we'll have that for this year, and then for year on out, our policies will go calendar year. And then, so we'll know at budget time. And it may not be by the time the budget document comes out, hopefully it is, but we can still make adjustments at the budget hearings in December.
And then, are dental and medical overlapped, or are we gonna try to unify
So
them?
dental, we just did at the last meeting.
Right.
Unfortunately, we tried to get it, but it was
Right.
gonna be a 4% increase, but they never sent anything. So it will still end next year on June 30th.
Same
And we
way,
will be
okay.
asking either for short, so to end it in
Sure.
31st, and then renewal for January 1 of 2024.
Okay, okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
And a quick clarification to that, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Just a quick clarification, the health insurance contract with United Healthcare, that actually ends September 30th.
That's what I thought, okay.
So we will have an October 1st renewal, and so that's why I started the Form Fire census data on Friday, in the hopes that, I'm giving everyone till the end of July, so in the hopes that by mid-August, we will have that information and we can start to negotiate. And it'll have to be the next, if we stay with United Healthcare, it'll be our next contract where we can get it fully on the calendar year. That's as close as they would allow us to get it this past time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So are we asking for a 15-month contract then, or are you trying to get
We
it
will.
to December 31st of 23?
Correct.
Correct, okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with the health
With
insurance.
whomever we
Right.
end up with.
okay, makes sense, thank you.
Thank you, Board. Next item, I apologize, on page 53, I'll turn it over to Fire Marshal.
Good evening, Board. Two quick kind of updates that weren't included in your packet. One was just kind of an update on the 4th of July. We did have a successful parade and fireworks. As you're aware, our department goes down before, or as the shooters arrive at Rotary Park, and we're there throughout the entire day for the shoot and then post fireworks shoot. So everything went successful. It was a good show, and like to acknowledge the fact that we work with the city and all the other agencies fairly well. So that was one. The second one is we just had our first in-person meeting with Planning Next, who is doing our comprehensive land use plan. It was a little orientation meeting. We discussed some goals, timelines, and various things like that. It was a fantastic meeting. You know, Planning Next is a fairly large national company. They've won awards in Alabama, North Carolina, Georgia. The crew that came down is very, very excited to work with us. They were especially, you know, excited and acknowledged the fact, gave great praise to the staff, and especially Max, for having all the preparation documents ready for this first orientation meeting. So it was a very, very good meeting. We're going to be on schedule and going through with it. So it's just to give you an update on that. So, but that's all I have. If there's any questions with those.
I do have one question. Sadly, I saw the signs going for Russ Properties to be sold. And I was just wondering, could we work with the university prior to their sale to see if we can get some of that land on the corner of Alpha and Indian Ripple as donated for the traffic circle that eventually will be there before they sell it and we have to go through another entity? Do you think we could bring that up to them?
We have a meeting Wednesday or Thursday this week on the final results of the safety study, so we don't know yet what the actual results are. If it does require a roundabout, we can definitely sit down with the schools and Ohio University. I will tell you, Community Development and RIS staff have been meeting regular with OU to discuss kind of the transition and operations. Obviously, Ohio University still wants to be involved in some way.
Even
you
though
know,
they're selling all their land?
correct. So that's kind of
Okay.
the, you know, they still want some sort of footprint in this area, but not essentially managing real estate.
Well, I would suggest that we put that as a topic, because if we can get that approved prior to a land sale, we don't have to deal with all the other complications that would go along with that?
Absolutely.
And if they can agree and then cut that, you know, even if we have to annex it for a minute or do whatever to get a hold of the property and hold it, and then they can sell the rest of the unit off, I think that would be
Sure.
cost effective for everybody,
Sure.
especially taxpayers.
It is interesting that, what was it, less than, 2 years ago, they were before us asking for specific zoning to put gas station and other uses on that property, and they said they would never had an intention of selling the property.
I know,
Yeah.
it's so
And
sad.
so less than 2 years later, it's up for sale. Isn't there there is a deed restriction though on portion of the not on the corner and not on the tree farm, but on the other part of the property that as far it must be used for research and development.
Mhm.
There is a deed
So-
restriction.
Right, so that should be in perpetuity, but yeah, okay, that's interesting. It's a lesson to understand as far as zoning isn't necessarily for the current owner, it's for what could be there.
Mhm. Any other questions?
Thank you, Board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board. Next item is on page 62 of your packet is the bi-weekly report for
I'm
IT.
sorry, I had one other question, Mr. Grogan, and it was relative just to revenue projections for your department based on permits being down, 80%, significantly, as far as revenue projections for your department compared to, not only for where this year will end up, but for next year as well.
Correct. We're still looking at the next year. I know we've done some calculations, and they're kind of in comparison to what's happening across the board. With most communities, the percentage is going to be down probably 22% or so. So we have
Yeah,
not projected
we're
in the
down-
next year.
Obviously, we're down significantly more than that.
Yep.
So there's an anticipation of a rebound, but at the same time, mortgage companies are laying off. So, because they anticipate by the end of the year that they would be in a slowdown from the housing starts, so.
Yeah,
It's
gonna be
something
interesting
to keep in
time.
front of us, obviously, because we
Absolutely.
built an infrastructure up to support a demand, and if the demand isn't there, then, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Board. Next item is on page 62 is your bi-weekly report for IT. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
And things are stabilized as far as some of the issues or challenges you were having there?
Yeah, so they're finishing up, as I mentioned last meeting, the transition. So once these final switches are configured and put in, they'll be doing some fail-safe on the network. They did some work Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock. We were down maybe 20 minutes while they were putting some of the infrastructure in. So that was good, and then everything was back up before I left for the day on Friday. So we're slowly getting there. Obviously, we had some supply chain issues with some of the network switches. The next major, obviously, IT project is going to be in this room and replacing all the outdated and some of the broken equipment in regards to audio and visual. They, with the remodel coming starting on August 9th, we are prepared, depending on supply chain issues, to be up and running, either partial on new, partial on old, or completely new. Hopefully it's completely new by the September 12th trustee meeting.
When does our contract with Paragon expire?
We are in our second year of a 3-year contract.
3-year, okay. So thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions?
No? Any? Thank you.
Thank you, Board. Next item is on page 64 of your packet is the biweekly report for the Finance Department. Are there any questions?
Mr. Rushing, do you have, so looking at your, the report you provided as far as the cash positions, do you have a report that, or can you provide any detail, or can Ms. Molden provide any detail as far as what the dollars that we have invested versus dollars we have sitting in cash?
Absolutely. I also emailed out just recently a calendar invite query to schedule our investment oversight committee.
Okay.
Our investment advisor had a procedure done and has been unresponsive and he's unable to travel. So that most likely will be a Teams meeting.
Sure.
But actually, just earlier today, I spoke to Ms. Molden, who's refining a cash flow worksheet that we can certainly provide to the board and update that in the packet as well.
Okay. And specifically, I guess what I was looking for was just, if we have hypothetically $10 million, are we at $8 million invested or $2 million of that $10 million invested? And what percentage is sitting in cash?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I know the board has requested in the past, but our auditors will be here August 8th through the 12th. That was just an email today, so it was not included in the update that Mrs. Molden provided.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for the finance department?
I had none.
I had none, thank you.
Thank you, board. Next item is on page 67 of your packet. First is to approve an agreement between county engineer and Beavercreek Township Board of Township Trustees for the 2022 paving project. I have 2 copies here that we will hand deliver tomorrow to the engineer once approved. This has been approved by our legal as well. Mr. Parks is here to answer any questions.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
To sign.
Thank you.
Well, it's good to see this on the docket here.
Yes. I was gonna ask if, all the paving projects that, we had for this year, do you think we could still get them done with the delayed time and finally getting this?
According to the agreement, everything has to be done by, I think, October 31st. And the contractor felt pretty confident with that date, but we'll see. It all depends on weather.
Sure.
Well, we don't have to pave the roads underwater, so just the ones above. Okay.
There's a motion on page 67.
I make a motion to accept the agreement with Greene County Engineer to participate in the 2022 paving bid as presented.
Second.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Crutz?
Yes.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes.
Thank you, board. Next item is request the purchase request for such paving. Budget justification starts on page 67 with a motion on page 68.
I make a motion, this is the motion on page 68, you said?
68, yes.
Yeah. Make a motion to approve purchase request 22-row-397 to Fillmore Construction for 2022 paving in the amount of $370,000. Is that an amount not to exceed?
That's the contractor.
Okay, that's the contract. In the amount of $370,000 and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Trustee Crutz?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes.
Thank you, board. Last item on the road is the bi-weekly report. Are there any questions for Mr. Parks?
Looks like there's no questions for you, Mr. Parks. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
Thank you, board. Next item is on page 77 is your packet. I'll turn it over to the fire chief.
Good evening, Board. I'd like to report that this evening we have no purchase requests for you. Didn't want to wear out our welcome too much.
I
So.
appreciate that.
In addition to the biweekly, just 2 awareness items, we were able to see a couple of you out at our active threat training, so I appreciate it. It was a very successful training, we believe. It was a rebuilding year, so you didn't see kind of the heyday of what we are able to accomplish. But that was an important step in getting back to that. So we'll continue building as we have in the past to make sure that we have the the best preparedness for any type of disaster that we possibly can. And it's probably worth pointing out that active threat is the scenario we use, but the unified command system that we practice is really the most important part, and most recently was used to great effect to mitigate the disaster when we had the tornado come through. So we use the skill set in many different scenarios, although that's probably the most critical that we could imagine needing to use it in. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions if you have any.
I think to add to maybe our meeting with the school board, I would ask you to mention to the school board that we would like to have more, the support again of the principals as Ms. Regano found our principal at Beavercreek High School.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that worked out really well when he was involved and saw what all you were doing. So maybe we can add that to our agenda item, that, you know, that make them aware about the active threat and how when we do it at a school, having principal at part of that whole session is really important.
Okay,
As
we
we
absolutely can
follow.
add that. And matter of fact, we have a few things that we did after action with the state school safety center folks that we want to bring to them about identifying rooms and things. So that'll be a good opportunity to
Yeah,
introduce that topic as
If
well.
we add that to the agenda.
Okay. We made some great contacts. We had a number of agencies represented. The VA was here with some officers practicing, because obviously they have similar type of situations on site. We had the school safety center from the state of Ohio. We had a number of other law enforcement agencies. So it was a good turnout, and a lot of people participated. So it was a good opportunity for us.
And one of the things that came out of it when I was there on Tuesday was staff showed me there's an app that the fire has on buildings and shows the egress and everything in the building. And so Chief is going to meet with Brian Martin of MVRPC to see if they can start assisting us in our building mapping, and also the chief can show them so that they can start, maybe the objective for MVRPC would be to map every building in the 7-county area and allow that to be accessible to
Yeah,
fire
and with their
police.
involvement, we could expand it beyond just schools. So institutions, the VA being another good example, hospitals, critical facilities like that could be included with, if they have the resources to help support it.
So that'll be you're on that.
We'll look
email
forward to
chain.
that, yes.
Good.
Two things, I'm presuming that information would be limited as far as distribution to just
Yes,
emergency.
yeah.
It would not be publicly available.
That is correct.
Right. So second, on your biweekly report, and really just, I guess, a mid-year kind of recap or question, so I know you're a statistics or a data person, so.
And I didn't bring my hard copy to read with you, so I apologize.
Then let me throw some numbers at you. No. So, no, the question would be at the next meeting or the meeting thereafter, essentially be interested to understand it, because it's always one of those things where, because the fire department is, obviously serves both the incorporated and the unincorporated portions of the township. And so when we see the graphical representation on the information you provide us as far as the dots on the map, we'll call it, it'd be interesting to understand just mid-year where we are at as far as the ratio of incorporated versus unincorporated calls for service. And if that's trending similar or dissimilar to the past.
Okay.
So, and it's just talking points, so that when we're out and people say, well, why do you have so many fire stations, and where do they all, why aren't there more in the city, or why aren't there more in the township? It'd be interesting to just be able to have basic, percentages and say it's consistent with the past, or it's moving to where we're having more calls in these areas.
Okay, yeah, we can absolutely do that.
Thank you. That's all I have.
I attended the day there with the active shooter training, and it was very cool, cool to see, and all the work and preparation that you guys put into, putting those maps together, and every room, every door, it's a lot of work that you guys do to make sure that you can mitigate problems that would arise, whether you said the tornado or the threat of the school or whatever it may be, pick up places, and all the things that you guys have put into creating those scenarios is really cool, so.
Well, thank you. And the mapping in particular is a huge team effort. Our operational folks are involved, prevention's heavily involved. Obviously, the plans come from the schools themselves, and the law enforcement agencies are involved in those as well. So it takes all of us together to get that working. And as this was already pointed out, if we can take that, we might be able to take it from just what we're doing here in Beavercreek and use it as a template for both county and regional use. Because if something like that were to happen, and well, the VA, I keep coming back to that since they were there, if something happens to the VA, we're likely to be involved with them. You know, as a tertiary unit, perhaps, maybe just transporting, but it would be a significant sized event where they're going to be calling resources from all over the region. So, well, thank you for coming out. I appreciate it. It was great seeing both of you.
Thank you.
We know your schedule is a little dicey these days, so we thought about you, sir.
I appreciate it. I have a special question for you the next time.
I was trying to anticipate what the questions would be, and then I just gave up because I knew it wasn't worth it.
You got a friend.
For a friend, it's been
He's
sitting
got a
there for
friend.
like 10 minutes. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you.
Appreciate your
And just
time.
one other item of note, and that is the new Premier Emergency Department is now open. And I was informed earlier today that we had the distinguished honor of transporting the first patient to it. Mr. A.J. Zaharieff drove the medic.
No, it was you took him.
Who was primary care on it? Do you know? Zedeker? Okay. So yeah, our crews were able to transport the first patient, which we thought was very appropriate. And apparently there were tacos, one.
Yes, so they will have a trauma training and taco night because they brought the first EMS transport patient. That was the third patient in the facility,
Oh.
was the first transported by ambulance.
Okay. So I stand corrected. So, but they are up and running, and we hope to use them to great effect, especially for keeping our in-service times down, being
To
able to
clarify,
recycle.
so that is in urgent care, or that is in?
It is an emergency department. It is a receiving emergency department.
Okay.
I don't believe they have trauma
But they
registered.
don't, they do not
They're
admit
not a
that.
registered trauma center.
Okay.
So if you go to that facility and then you need to be admitted, you would be transported downtown.
Yes, and we would typically not be involved in that transport.
Right. And you cannot, and they do not transfer to Soin across the
Correct.
street, which is my understanding. Okay.
Yeah, or it'd be interesting if they did.
It would be interesting.
They do have a couple 24-hour hold beds, so if you
Yeah.
do not have to be admitted but need to be observed for that 24-hour, they're different rooms, so
Right.
it's more like a hospital room as opposed to an ER.
So,
But yeah, it does meet the requirement for the state of Ohio for us to transport to them as a destination.
but the technology there is fantastic, and the way they have it set up. To, you know,
Did you have another question, sir? Okay. And just kind of as an interesting by the by, based off of that whole transporting to other facilities, we got called up to another area earlier. Actually, it wasn't earlier today. It was this weekend where a patient had left AMA, was still hooked up to an IV, and requested us to transport to another facility. So the workload and the volume and the wait times are such that there is definitely a use or a need for additional bed space. So it's never a good sign when patients have to leave a facility to go to another facility. And that is the one exception probably to us transporting is, to us, they're a brand-new patient, we have to take them someplace. And if they refuse maybe the closest, most appropriate, we may have to go someplace else.
Is it deemed level 1, 2, 3?
No, it does not have a trauma rating, correct. So if we do have a trauma, we would still have to go to one of the designated trauma centers.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you, board, that's all I have.
Okay, our legal advisor, any comments?
Just want to let you know that, the township did receive notice of getting, it's going to be getting its first distribution for the opioid settlement. $11,656.58. It wasn't entirely clear, it just said it's gonna be rolling on, but they're starting immediately on how quickly that, the township will get it. but, it is at least the first of, I think it's 18 different distributions.
Oh, wow. Yes, thank you.
Ms. Frick, did we ever, did we send a letter or notice to the Township Road property owner?
Yes,
Okay, and did we receive any response or any indication back or acknowledgement?
nothing.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, fiscal officer, Mr. Rushing.
Thank you, Board. This is a brief informational item. I spoke on this a couple of meetings ago, but we want to include in your packet the official results of our motor vehicle license audit. This is a best practice that we implemented for the calendar year 2021. This was to audit all motor vehicle licenses that the township collects. As previously mentioned, this includes looking at all the overlapping zip codes that a township resident may have that may have a different mailing address. And of all the other jurisdictions that we audited, there were 103 licenses that were incorrectly distributed to the different taxing jurisdiction. As you see in your packet there, resulting in a recovery of $3,771 from the other taxing jurisdiction back to Beavercreek Township and back to the motor vehicle license fund, so that our road department and their crew can go and put that money back to the taxpayers and put it to use to paving our streets. This is a best practice that many entities implement, and I'm happy to implement here and look forward to continues doing this audit for future years to come. That's all I have this evening.
And
Thank
Mr.
you.
Rushing, the resources that performed the audit, was it our in-house resources, or was it county resources, or a third party that we had to hire?
It was a third party. There is a niche service that conducts this, and our total cost for that service was $499. So the
That's
net
very
increase
expensive.
is still over $3,200 we received.
Great, that's what I was looking for, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Going to our trustee meetings, MVRPC, no meeting this month. MVRPC Technical Advisory,
No meeting.
Regional Planning, Green
Nothing to
County,
report at this.
Health Department District.
Yes, thank you, Board. I did provide you a agenda item in your board mail. Just one major discussion at the Health Department. There was a presentation in regards to public health nuisances and how the Health Department works with not only the cities but more with the townships with a lot of the public nuisances. A lot of discussion under 505.87 of the Ohio Revised Code, which is under townships, public nuisance, and Ohio Revised Code 370701, which is their authority. They did present to the board, staff presented to the board that they have excellent working relationships with all the townships. Mention a few townships and staff that they work on individual, and that a lot of the public nuisance, they work together with the local townships and the municipalities, and depends on what is the stronger statute in regards to whether for us it's under 505 or for the health department under 3707. So it was a very good meeting. I did bring some stuff back to staff and the community development and rest department, some code sections that we may want to look at with some of our public nuisance. Other than that, that's all I have for the.
Thank you very much, that's great. School superintendent, city manager, and township representative.
Don't have a meeting with the superintendent, because we're having a meeting this week. I did have a meeting with the city manager, and a lot of the discussions were over, and this was before the 4th of July, so 4th of July operations, both for the city and the township. In regards to we had 6 deputies in for the event, plus the interaction between the city and the fire department, as well as the great continued work between the sheriff's office and Beavercreek Police on the planning of the event. We did talk about city council canceled their meeting for tonight. So their next meeting, they will be moving forward potentially with some property tax incentives, one for the road department in the city and one for the city police department. That's all I have.
Thank you.
No meeting on RAPAC.
Green County Township Association meeting will be tomorrow night at 6:30 at the Miami Township Fire Station, and it's hosted by Xenia, Bath, and Miami Township townships. So anyone that wants to come are invited. Investment Oversight Committee,
No report.
thank you very much. Okay,
I'll make a motion to go into executive session under Ohio Revised Code, section 121.22G1, to consider dismissal, discipline, demotion, and compensation of public employees.
Second.
Trustee Kretz,
Yes.
trustee Dean,
Yes.
trustee Walls.
yes. Thank you very much.
Make a motion to come out of executive session.
Second.
Trustee Kretz,
Yes.
trustee Dean.
Yes.
Trustee Walls.
Yes.
Unless we need any discussion on this,
Excuse me?
any discussion prior to this.
I'll just, the chief presented his charges in the investigation of Lieutenant Matt Clark. We have the executive summary, the investigation, the charges, where Lieutenant Clark violated township policies. We do have to consider now accepting the charges, and then you have the opportunity here at this point to suspend them without pay or continue what you did at the last regular meeting. And then by statute, we have to have a hearing on the investigation at your next regular scheduled meeting.
And, you know, during the regular session, there was a suggestion of making a modification, and that's not an appropriate use of.
Yeah, so the request that the vice president of the union presented on behalf of Lieutenant Clark was to use sick leave. Sick leave is not an appropriate use either by township policy or by the union contract.
Unit contract, okay. I'll make a motion to accept the charges in the fire chief's investigation report designated by motion 2022-0627-admin-H, Matthew Clark. Matthew Clark shall remain on unpaid administrative leave. He is able to utilize his vacation and compensatory time during this period of staffing allows. However, shift trades are not permitted.
Second.
Trustee Kretz,
Yes.
trustee Dean,
Yes.
trustee Walls.
Yes.
Thank you, board. That's all I have for you tonight.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Trustee Dean,
Yes.
trustee Kretz.
Yes.
Trustee Walls.
Yes. Thank you very much.